Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Skull Session. Today, we have Mr. David Frost joining us. He is the current CEO of SATSA. He's an economist by profession with 22 years under his belt at the executive level of tourism strategy. Welcome to our show, Mr. Frost.
Yeah, to be with you and welcome to your viewers and listeners.
So, before I take a deep dive into hard facts, quick question: what's the current situation in South Africa right now?
Well, we've things are looking quite promising actually on the front. We have been dealing with the pandemic. We're a developing country, not much the same as India, and there were relatively high levels recorded, and there has been a lot of widespread testing, but those levels have been coming down quite sharply. So we are well over the peak. The government has been managing the pandemic in a risk-adjusted strategy process. We started at level 5. We are down to level 2. Domestic tourism is now opened up right across the country, so inter-provincial travel is now allowed. And the last sort of barrier and the last thing that we are looking at doing is trying to get the inbound side open. But that, as you would be well aware, has lots of moving parts, not least which is what's happening in our source markets.
So, in the interest of the audience, could you please put a brief overview about SATSA?
Yeah, so SATSA is the Inbound Tourism Association in South Africa. We represent 1,300 companies on the inbound space. So this would span the entire gamut. So we have around 500 DMCs or inbound tour operators, crucial in a touring destination like South Africa, where you get 14-day plus itineraries that having to be put together. We also have all the big hotel groups, all the smaller hotels, boutique hotels, all the game lodges, very important component of the South African tourism offering. Car rental is part of us, the domestic airlines, all the adventure tourism product, as well as all the youth product. So the product that appeals to the more youth side of tourism. And in a sense, that is SATSA. So we've been quite focused on South Africa as our base, but we're about to do quite an interesting point of departure, and that is we're launching an international affiliate membership, which is open to outbound operators and travel agents in our source markets. And really two things there. Those members would get access to the SATSA database, which I think would be interesting and crucial for them, particularly in the post-COVID world, because, just to be frank, you want to know who's left standing and who is credible in terms of who's left standing. And then secondly, we want to, those members would get access to all our communications. And that's something that as an association, we have done, I think, sterling work in terms of our current membership, is just providing a regular flow of communication about what is happening in all aspects of how the pandemic is being managed, from financial support to, from government to lobbying efforts to a variety of marketing initiatives that have been undertaken. And in essence, by drawing together an international component of our membership together with the product base in South Africa, we are in effect creating a virtual buying bubble.
So, my next question is a little focused on the current situation or the scenario, but before I get into it, does SASTA play an important role in the tourism policy of South Africa? Question number 1, followed by the second question. If SASTA does play a role, and I'm sure that SASTA has influence, unlike many other associations in many other geography or just lip service, to bring in the government support to the tourism ecosystem. So were you able to bring that out this time around?
Yeah. So yes, SATSA is an important part of the tourism fabric in South Africa. But the inbound side of things is but one of a of a broader tapestry. So we have the Outbound and Business Travel Association, SATSA. We have a number of other associations representing domestic and regional airlines, all the foreign carriers coming in. We have an organization called FedHasa that represents hotels and restaurants, and there we have quite a big overlap with SATSA. So we have about 8 different large industry associations. And these come together under the umbrella auspices of an organization called the Tourism Business Council. So as the CEO of SATSA, I sit on the board of the Tourism Business Council. There are a number of individual corporates that are also members of that association. But that provides us with a sort of a one point or one voice in terms of how we take issues up with our government. And, you know, we've worked quite fiendishly through the TBCSA as this crisis has unfolded, and it's given us a very good base in which to engage with governments. And they have been, we've been working as closely as we can with our Minister of Tourism and with all the other auxiliary ministries that fit into this thing. I mean, transport is key, affairs is key, our foreign, we call it DIRCO. It's the equivalent of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in other countries. So all of these ministries need to be engaged on, and then obviously you've got the very key ministry in the whole thing, which is health. So there is a bit of let's just be quite frank and honest about it. There has been quite a keen debate around lives versus livelihoods, which is one way to sort of cast how one approaches this thing. And we certainly are very cognizant of lives and they're important. But equally, if we're not able to sustain livelihoods, then lives are put in jeopardy from an economic point of view. So, we're not alone in this. I think that all countries globally are grappling with many of the same. But, we take these issues up tirelessly on our members' behalf. And one of the things we've put in place, which is we haven't had before, and it's something that I've been very, very, sort of hard on, is to set up a proper structured engagement with government around how we deal with various elements of this. We need to get well beyond the sort of anecdotal, sort of back channeling and one-on-one conversations. If you have a proper structured engagement where the public sector and the TBCSA representing the private sector sit down, we have clear agendas, minutes are kept, records are kept, people are held to account. It's one way that we can put a unified recovery strategy together, which I think is very important in terms of how we look to the future.
During this COVID window, domestic and international tourism, or tourism as a category. So what are the economic initiatives taken by SATSA to support the local tourism ecosystem?
SATSA is, we have put into place the main thing that we've done is to be able to provide a very real-time communication window. We as SATSA are not able to initiate economic support structures. We don't have the funds in the coffers for that. I mean, I want to say that just one thing for your audience is it's been amazing that the support we've seen from our members. Of the 1,300 members, and you can imagine the dire straits people are in, where the taps are turned off. This is not about getting reduced volumes. This is about zero business. And 80% of our members have paid their membership dues. And I mean, it's testament to the esteem that our members hold the association. But so we as SATSA are not able to, get involved. We need to, what we've done is been lobbying government to see what sort of support measures can be put in place. But to be frank, the South African economy wasn't in a very strong position prior to the COVID sort of pandemic. So, unlike we have regular dialogue with international colleagues, and we forged quite a strong relationship over the last 2 years with the Australian Tourism Export Council, which is our equivalent in Australia. Now, they've taken a different approach to managing the pandemic, in which they've they've almost tried to keep it out. I mean, I think it's a fairly disingenuous approach. That's my personal opinion. Because as the Swedes said to them, the one thing you haven't thought about is how you're going to open up. Then you can never open up. You've got to manage this thing. It's got to be a risk-adjusted strategy. So they're only even talking about opening up at the end of next year, or even into 2022. But the Australian economy is a lot stronger than the South African economy. So they are getting some form of financial support during the process. The support from the South African government side has not been as strong as the Australians have had. We have had there's been a thing called UIF, which is unemployment insurance scheme, and the government has made that available. 600,000 people in South Africa, employees, have applied for that, and that has allowed a sort of 3 months sustenance to help the industry going forward. But from a financial point of view, that's really about the sort of sum of it. We've also had quite a big issue around business interruption insurance, where some of the big insurers have not been forthcoming in paying claims. So we've been acting on members' behalf in concert with legal teams to try and resolve that, and we've made some good breakthroughs there, and a lot of our members are seeing insurance payments come through. But the whole thing, Aaron, is really to be able to try and sustain yourself, or sort of put your business into a downscaled situation in which you can ride this out and emerge on the other side. So the opening of domestic tourism is key. Although a lot of our product in our inbound side is focused on the international market, bear in mind that we also have a very vibrant outbound leisure market out of South Africa that cannot travel. So what we're doing is providing marketplaces, high-end product that's traditionally focused on inbound, and we're now having conversations with outbound agents we've never spoken to before to try and divert that business to those products. And that's important because that enables lodges and big hotels. I was just on a conversation last week with the owners of the One and Only, the shareholders in Dubai, and they were asking key questions: should they close or should they not close? And we were able to persuade them that there's a very, very strong and quite lucrative high-end outbound market, and that is now just going to basically take a holiday in South Africa rather than go to Paris or Bali or India.
So it's fantastic to hear. What I kind of understood is SATSA and the tourism community is trying everything possible under the sun to make things work in the given situation, and it's uplifted by the spirit of the tourism community without giving up and moving forward inch by inch. So I'm going to push it here a little.
Yeah,
Do you think South African government, they don't recognize tourism as an important sector, while tourism contributes a huge percentage into the South African economy? And is there a disconnect there between the on-ground reality and the government perception?
Well, look, let me just say that in my 25 years in working in strategy and tourism, it's a perennial struggle, and it's not unique to South Africa. Is this struggle to convince governments that tourism is an important indicator? It's the raison d'etre and the sort of ongoing work that the World Travel and Tourism Council have always engaged. Yes, it's something that we are busy on, but we're not alone in this respect. We've seen other key sectors in South Africa that have not, to their minds, received the same sort of or the necessary support that they see out of their government. And I think that our government has been very focused on firstly saving lives and trying to deal with that. As a result, this risk-adjusted strategy process was put into place. And I mean, two things really that were shut down was the tobacco industry and the alcohol industry. These are major revenue generators, as is tourism. But the government felt that these were necessary in order to try and sort of preserve sort of preserve lives. So I think that what we've seen now is that as the pandemic levels have come down, and I think that the measures that have been put in place have really borne fruit. And I think it's testament to the government's approach. I think that, what they've done, and I mean, I use this word, please, just go with me, because I haven't got another word to use it, is they've embraced the thing, as opposed to the Australians who try to keep it out. That you've got to deal with this thing, and the only way to deal with it is to minimize risk. So it's our job to convince government that this is an important sector. So we've taken a two-pronged approach. There is the economic argument side of things, and we've been hard at work to put all that economic data on the table about the value of the industry. But equally, what we've had to do is and this is the sort of phase that we're currently involved in terms of our recovery strategy, is to develop a very practical and clear strategy around the how. So I refer to the economic data argument as the what. That's what, there it is, it's important. But practically, this is how we can do it. And one of the things that we started with, and we've done, I think, very well, is put a set of world-class protocols in place, signed off by the World Travel and Tourism Council. The government has now adopted. And indeed, other parts of Southern Africa are also picking up on these protocols and have adopted them, because many people who come into our part of the world don't just holiday in South Africa. They'll do a Botswana leg or get up to Vic Falls, or maybe even get across to Mozambique or Namibia. So we're looking at it from a regional point of view as well. But that puts us in a really sort of strong position to actually carry on this conversation with government. But let's just bear in mind, and I just want to be quite frank and forthright with your viewers, is there is a perception. So there's the value proposition to government, but then there's also the perception that still permeates from what I would call the health hawks in government, the health and securocrat guys, is that tourism brought the pandemic to South Africa. But in a way that, to me, that's axiomatic. It's taken as given. That's the way the pandemic spread around the world. But to carry on taking a pernicious view of tourism on the back of that is disingenuous. Mm-hmm. And that's what, this is our job. We continue to engage and there's a lot more I can perhaps share with you, but let me not your more sort of focused questions that may get involved in that side of things.
And my last question before we wrap up, what is your projection as we open up, as the market opens up? What do you think the response of international tourists would be? Would South Africa be on the same list as the list of aspirational destinations to go to? What would be the standard safety standard or the SOPs followed? And how do you think economically it's going to impact?
We've got to look at the numbers. So prior to COVID, South Africa attracted 2.5 million international arrivals. Now, in world terms, this is relatively small. Thailand gets 32.5 million, Turkey 56 million, Spain and France 80 million arrivals each. And there's obviously massive intra-first world travel between the United States, Europe, China. But think about that big European value proposition or tourism proposition. It's essentially built on antiquities, cuisine. It's about large groups of people generally moving around indoors because the weather's generally not great. And that model, I just want to suggest, is yesterday's. Nobody's going to do that again. Nobody's going to go and throng in thousands of tourists in Venice anymore, because your chances of getting COVID are sky high. So I think that the sort of COVID world that we live in throws up very interesting possibilities for South Africa, because with the 2.5 million, and bearing in mind we get just over 100,000 arrivals from India, which is also small. I think that we punch well under our weight. We know that there've been constraints around the visa issues and everything else like that certainly need attention. But in a COVID world where the South African value proposition, with the weather we have, the wide open spaces, the fact that we're not a mass tourism destination, you don't see the sort of behavior that we've seen in Europe, where they have opened up to encourage tourism. but a lot of that behavior is short haul. You get the sort of yob type element, you get people getting drunk, behaving badly, and that leads to a spike in infections. We don't get that type of tourism in South Africa. So it lends itself to modular family travel, and the game viewing things are activities that take place where there are very few people around you. That, coupled with the protocols we've put in place, I think puts South Africa in an incredibly favorable position. And what we've seen, Aaron, historically is where because we get such a small proportion of world tourism, where there's a hiccup in the first world. In 2016, there were security issues around Turkey. So the Thomas Cook Group in Europe sent 3 million less people to Turkey that year than the year before. Those people are still going to go on holiday, and what they do is they look for safe places, and in that respect, they look south. So both Australia and South Africa in 2016, doing nothing differently with our marketing, we saw our international arrivals grew at 18%. And we saw the same response after 9/11. The year after 9/11, we grew at 20%. And I think that when and if borders do open up, and that's the big conundrum, is there's obviously a very fluid situation in countries. Europe was looking the most promising. They did look at travel bubbles and corridors, and just with the rise of infections and perhaps a possible second wave, those are closing down. So this has got to be monitored on an ongoing basis. We're working very closely with ambassadors and high commissioners from our key source markets in South Africa so that we continue that conversation. We're working closely and speaking to airlines on a day-by-day basis. But what you don't want to do is open up and close down the next week. So we've got a gradual and a phased approach. We've got to look at piloting with key source markets and seeing what we can do. But there's a massive appetite here, and I think once opened up, South Africa is going to become quite a sought-after destination. But bearing in mind just the access that we have by air, where we are in the world, I think there's a natural way that can be almost regulated, just to ensure that we keep, almost a tourism distancing, that people can have a safe and a fun experience in this. We've got our AGM coming up tomorrow. My theme for the AGM is a leaf out of Aldous Huxley. It's a brave new world.
Thank you, Mr. Frost. That was quite an insightful session. I believe lots and lots of work is underway at the executive level at both SATSA, the Business Travel Council, as well as the Tourism Ministry. Best wishes on opening up the market, and hope to connect with you soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aaron, and to your viewers as well. Be safe.